Hey there, welcome to the Eurostep Podcast Network YouTube channel. I'm Ty Winnish. I'm going to walk through why I think the Bucks are struggling this year. A lot of people have a lot of ideas. I just wanted to share my thoughts, and this is not all-encompassing, and struggling is relative. They're fifth in the East. They're not that far away from first in the East, but after a bad loss to the Cavs, and I mean, let's be honest, this is a team we're used to winning more than 50 games a season, for sure. And they're on pace to just barely win 50 if they get there. So I think struggling is fair. And this is not all encompassing. I'm not going to go into every single reason. I just have what I think is a very simplistic, maybe in a good way, maybe not, hopefully in a good way, view of why the Bucks are struggling. And I think it is easier maybe than people think. I don't think it's a systemic thing, like they don't care. They're not taking the regular season uber seriously, sure. I think saying they don't care is a little reductive and not exactly true. I think what is true is they just don't have enough available talented players on a nightly basis for most of these games. So let's get into it. First up here, I think the easiest way to look at this is by sorting all the players into tiers, and then we can take a look at some different things from there. So first, I mean, obviously the big three, Giannis, Chris, Drew. This is a great start. These guys just won a championship. They're awesome. When they are available, I think the Bucks are 18-4 after last night. Net rating still really good. When you have these three guys all available, that's awesome. Your margin for winning is much higher, and the team is very good. And then you have a bunch of guys who this season have been rock solid rotation players. Yeah, that's fair. It's cooled off, but I think we'll put him there. For now. I think Wes has played himself in there too. Now this is right here, and let's throw Brook Lopez in there. He hasn't played this year, but when Brook Lopez is available, for sure, right? Like you could argue he should be on his own tier between these two, or maybe even on that tier. Wes Matthews has been excellent since being picked up. Unfortunately, was out last night. Pat Connaughton been great for 2 years. Grayson, a bad slump, but overall has been a plus offensive player, a good starter. And Bobby Portis has been a good starter, a guy, again, who really stepped up this season when the Bucks needed him to. And you could argue George Hill here, too. I think sometimes he scores just not enough. He does a lot of things well. Oh, not there. Sometimes his scoring just isn't quite enough for me. But you know what? Let's throw him up here, too. So that's what is that? 9 players? That's good. I mean, in an NBA regular season, you can only play 9 players if you want to. The Bucks are a team that's probably going to play more, at least 10 in most games. But 9 players is you got 9 good players. You're a hell of a team. Dante first up, and these are not ranked within tier. But Dante, inconsistent rotation player. He had a really good game against the Kings. I know he's coming back from a tough injury, but he just has not been consistently good this year. So I think it's fair to put him there. Jordan Nwora. Not coming off of an injury, certainly an offensive spark plug, but again, so much variation game to game. Really just consistency. We know what he can do. I think his defense has actually been better than I expected this year, but offensively has not been very consistent. And then we'll throw Rodney Hood there too. He's been kind of solid lately, but has certainly not been rock solid. You could probably make the case to throw him down there. We'll be generous. We'll put him right there. And then not rotation players. This is not hate. I want to get this out of the way. I do not hate Sandro Mamukelashvili. I quite like Mamu. I think he's got a promising NBA future. He's just not all the way there yet. And again, you could argue up here. Honestly, let's put him up there. Let's put him up there. That's fine, I guess. But I mean, a 54th overall, two-way player, rookie. You know what? No, putting him back down here. I like Mamu. Don't always love his Bucks minutes. I think it's good learning experience for him. I don't think he's ready yet. Lindell Wigginton is the newest two-way player, just signed from the G League. Again, nothing against Lindell. I think he's looked good. I wouldn't call him a steady, reliable rotation player right now. Just going to throw TA here. I love TA. Rohan, more than me, I love TA too. I think Thanasis is great. I don't think he's a guy you look at and go, oh yeah, 15 minutes a night. I think he's a situational player. It helps. We all, I think, have an idea of why Thanasis is around. But he has some value. He's been useful in some spots, but you can't really look at TA, I think, and go, oh yeah, 15 minutes a night. Maybe, but the Bucks never have. So let's throw him there. At least that's how Bud looks at him. And then Number 37, Semi Ojeleye. I think everyone knows how I feel at this point. I was so excited about this signing. It has not worked out, to put it lightly. I don't know if there's anything more that needs to be said than that. He has not looked like a capable rotation player. He has played less than these two guys, I think, all of 2022. I think he's played more than Wigginton, but that's really not saying much. And then you may be wondering, is this an error? Is this a glitch? Who is that? That's DeMarcus Cousins, still in a Clippers jersey. He has not been around for a media day since being with the Clippers. But why is he blue? This is the ghost of Boogie Cousins. RIP that roster spot. I mean, the roster spot is there, but this was a fun time. This is the ghost of Boogie. He's just not around, which is a problem. So these are the Bucks' 17 roster spots, all identified right here. So Boogie, that's the open roster spot. He was the last one to hold it, not counting hardship exception 10-day guys. These are the two-way players. So that leaves you with then 14 guys on NBA contracts. And I think this alone is not summing up the problem with the Bucks this year. But let's do that. So now this is the idealized version of this year's roster. If everyone loves this hypothetical, well, if the Bucks were healthy, that's great to think about, and hopefully they are by the time the playoffs start. But we know right now they're not. So all season long, Brook has not played. Dante was not around for the first half of the season, but he's back now. Wes Matthews is hurt right at the moment. Let's move him down there. We don't know exactly how long he's going to be out. Hopefully not too long, but did not play against the Cavs. Grayson Allen suspended and injured, actually. I believe he missed the game because of the suspension against Cleveland, but also not around. So then you immediately get to a place where if Brook is just out for the time being, we don't know we have no idea when he comes back. He's out of there. Obviously, Boogie not around. When you have a situation where nagging injuries, a suspension, whatever else, keeps one or two of these guys, anyone in here out, you see how thin the team becomes immediately. So it's like having the big three is awesome. Again, their record has been really good, even with so much flux around them. 3 good rotation players. One of them has a bad night against the Cavs. George Hill didn't score, I don't think. Only 2 guys on the bench did score, and one of them was a late game Semi Ojeleye dunk. So at least for that game, we'll move George down here. Dante was not good. Rodney didn't play much. Wara wasn't very good. So now you're down to 5 guys who you can really trust to play. And that's tough, right? Like this was the starting 5 in that game. They were all relatively good. Drew had a cold offensive night. Giannis had a lot of turnovers. So now you get to these 2 guys don't play super well. Chris plays pretty well. These 2 guys play pretty well. So 2 of your stars are underachieving in a specific game. 1 is good. These 2 guys are good. So you're just not left with a whole lot because these players are inconsistent and you got bad nights from all 4. I mean, Rodney didn't really play, but it's like you just don't have that much points left. So I think Dante scored 7 in the last game on 9 shots, and that was it and Shemi had 2. I'm pretty sure that was all the scoring you got. I don't think Wigginton's still in protocols, I think, but you look at these whole tiers, that's all the scoring you got. So this is 2 points. You need to score like 100 plus to win an NBA game. That now means you need 20 each from these guys. Pat does not score 20 very often. Drew had a bad night. Giannis got there, but there was a lot of turnovers. So now it's like you don't have enough points and solid play to win every night against a good team like the Cleveland Cavaliers. Last night's Bucks team, do they beat Orlando? Maybe. It's probably one of those games where they have a nice lead early and then they run out of steam because these guys start to play a little bit more and the lead starts to go away and then these guys have to push harder and they get tired. It's a fraught equation. And you look at even when Grayson and Wes are healthy, he doesn't go up there. Chris misses a bunch of time this year. Now it's these 2 guys. Great, you got these guys, but maybe George is having a good game, but Grayson is cold that game. You're relying a lot on a few players. And when Chris is out, if Drew has a bad game, it's really Giannis, these 4 guys, and then you kind of need to get lucky with these guys. And I don't want to make excuses. Pretty much every team in the NBA is struggling with injuries this year, but I don't know how many have been without key players as much as the Bucks have. So I think when you see this team just kind of get owned by the Cavs and Giannis is eating wings afterward, I just think you can assume it's different if the team looks like this than when it looks like this, pretty obviously. And the hope has to be that by the end of this thing, the team looks like this. It's actually really this. And then, maybe Dante gets up there, maybe not. But the idealized version of the Bucks, we don't see minutes from any of these guys. And I just think it's hard to draw too many takeaways from games where we see minutes from, big minutes from Rodney Hood, big minutes from Jordan Nwora, Mamu especially. If these guys check in at all besides the end of the game, or TA with like 3 seconds left in a quarter to play defense, it's just not a very accurate representation of the healthy Bucks, of the ceiling of the Bucks. But it is what we're getting right now. And I think that's just why we're struggling, or we're seeing the Bucks struggle, I should say, is because the team looks like this, and there are 5 to maybe 6 rotation players in most games that you can really trust to bring consistent performances. And if one of them struggles, if Pat's 0 for 5 from deep, which has happened in a couple games, if Bobby's not having a good game, if those two things happen together and a couple players are out, you're just left with so little players carrying such a big load. Or, if Hill isn't really scoring, Bobby's having a good game, or any of these guys are struggling, you just don't have a lot of consistent production. And that's clearly a problem. So I just think Brook Lopez being back consistently, the team being more consistently healthy, fixes so much, because obviously you're in a much better spot if you're healthy and George has a bad game, Grayson has a bad game. You still have 7 guys who are giving you plus production in that game, right? And obviously you can flip this around. At a certain point, it's just a math problem. And the Bucks being a team that are not going to run Giannis, Chris, and Drew 44 minutes to win a game in January or February, which I think is the right approach. I do think you can't, especially after the long playoff run, you can't really do that sustainably. You're just going to lose some games that you probably shouldn't lose, or maybe get smoked in some games that you would lose, but it's even worse. Cavs had a great shooting night. I mean, maybe the Bucks fully healthy lose that game. You lose some games, it happens, but it does look worse than ever because of some of the roster flux and just inconsistencies. So I think adding a player in this spot, ideally a center or a 4-5, who is at least here, but I mean here, again, that fixes so much for the team, right? Like even if Brook remains out, but you add someone there, then it's like you can afford 2 guys having bad games. You can still go 7 deep on good players a given night when the team is relatively healthy. And even when some guys are out, you're appreciably deeper. And if you get a good Dante game, you're back up to 8 guys who you can trust. But even one bad game here, still 6, which is a lot more than like 4 or 3 or whatever else. So, and I also think the more good players you have in this tier, the more likely it is for guys in this tier to not struggle. I think that makes their lives easier. It's a double positive when you add in good players. So I would expect we see a much better version of the Bucks next time out if these 2 guys are back in itself. And again, the growth, maybe not growth is the right word, the goodness effect would compound if we're moving these guys up to this tier, and probably George. It's obvious, it's stark. And I think just putting it out in front of you can make it easier to appreciate how difficult it can be to consistently win games with a pretty thin team. And I think, Brook being so consistently good night to night, like again, like right really between these tiers, or even if you want to put him up here and call it the core 4, which I think is fair, like that makes such a difference, him not being around all year. It's so, so important. But I just think there's a lot of good players on this team, not Boogie, unfortunately. But again, maybe Boogie's closer to here, up here some nights, however you want to look at it. But there's just, they're struggling with the depth right now. And I think going from this to that version of everyone all together is going to be huge for the Bucks if they can do it. And hopefully between, health and recovery and the trade deadline, put player X in here. Is this Thad Young? Is this Robin Lopez? Who knows? Is this Mo Bamba maybe? That would have a huge impact just because you're not getting a ton out of these roster spots. And let's be optimistic and throw Dante up here. This is still 6 spots, currently on the roster where night to night you're not getting consistent contributions. And that's a problem when one roster spot is open. when one roster spot is open and one guy is out for like the whole season. So that's just where we're at. And I think the Bucks, their best chance of turning things around, is getting healthy and or adding a player or two. You know, swapping someone like Shemi out for, even if Shemi is in this tier instead of this tier, that's helpful. It all adds up, right? So Bucks need to get healthy, add a little bit of talent. Not that much talent though if they can get healthy, but they need to do one or the other to avoid more stinkers like the Cavs loss. So thank you so much for watching. Really appreciate it. Make sure you subscribe to the YouTube channel here if you're not already. Go ahead and click that. That's free. Also, subscribe to the podcast feed, Eurostep Podcast Network, covering all things Milwaukee Bucks, wherever you listen to podcasts. Also free. Go subscribe. There's going to be links down in the description below. And also the Substack, again, free Bucks content, gspn.substack.com. Also linked down below. Check it out, subscribe, drop a comment if you agree, disagree, your thoughts, but appreciate you watching, and we will talk to you soon.